Welcome to the fourth class in the study of Kaivalya Pādaḥ, the final chapter of the Yoga Sutras. So we are now studying the portion where Patanjali, or the author of the fourth chapter, is establishing the fact that there is a final Puruṣa, or the witness, that is seeing the mind. So he is giving a logical proof. So this chapter, as we've seen before, can be looked at as a consummation of all the previous chapters, things discussed. It talks about Janma, Karma, and Moksha. And before getting to Moksha, the moksha is attained when one knows that one is not the doer and one is separate from the body and the mind. When that is known, there is no kartritva bhava, there is no doership. When there is no doership, there is no karmic imprints. It is only when there is doership, I am doing, there is karmic imprints. But there are no karmic imprints, and that is the path for liberation. Oh. What is being established in this chapter. So in this portion plays two purposes. One, Patanjali is establishing this permanency of this ultimate witness. And also Patanjali is establishing all these things, the world we see is not a figment of our imagination. And he is also targeting some of the Buddhist theories that came up during that time. So I know some people are not happy that it seems like a refutation of the Buddhist theories, because Buddhism is very dear to a lot of us, and it doesn't seem to make sense that this serves two purposes. One is to explain the permanency of the Puruṣa, and the other is to refute certain Buddhist theories. But if you look at the big picture, how all these evolved, and the entire the so-called decline of the Vedanta, and how Shankaracharya revived it, and all this, you will see things fitting in the large scheme of things. And the Buddha himself was made into one of the deity, one of the avatars of Vishnu. So it is a very complex phenomenon. It's not like there was bloodshed or anything. It's just that everybody was trying to establish their theory. And these theories came up much after the Buddha. So they were all, because they had to distinguish themselves from the beliefs from what's called the Astika Darshanani, those which are dependent on the Vedas. They came up with different theories. So that is, you have to look at it from that point of view. So far, is it clear? Lena, are you happy with the explanation?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
It's
Okay. Now we just touched upon this sutra. Sada jnata chitta vrittayastat prabho purushasya parinamitvat. Due to being changeless, sada jnata, as always being perceived, the changes of the mind are perceived by the Puruṣa. Chitta vrittaya, the modifications of the mind are always perceived by who? By Tat Prabhu, that master. And it is due to how are they being perceived? Because the master, the Puruṣa, is changeless. Because the master is changeless, the changes of the mind are perceived by the Puruṣa. We talked about it in detail in, I think, 2 classes ago. For something to be the final witness, it has to be changeless. We established that. Like we gave the example of people in the boat going in the water and then somebody walking in the land. So if both are moving, they would look stationary, right? So you need it is misleading. So for the something to perceive and witness, it has to be changeless, because if it changes, to establish this change, you have something else which is a final witness. So and if something is changing but you cannot find the change, it's as good as changeless. There's no way for you to disprove. So the Purusha is said to be changeless. And due to being changeless, the changes of the mind are perceived by the Purusha, the master. Aparinamitvat, because of changeless, due to the immutability of the Purusha. And there's an important message in this sutra. It provides the logical proof of why you are the Purusha, are completely different from the mind. And it's also the final argument to refute the Vijnanavada Buddhism theory that consciousness is a momentary stream. Okay. Actually, this is the Kshanikavada theory that consciousness is a momentary stream. So the mind, we saw in the previous sutra, the mind only knows an object when it's colored by it. If it's not colored, it doesn't know. So sometimes we like daydream, right? We are lost in our thoughts. We are looking at something, but we don't know what's there in front of us. The imprint is formed in the mind. We discussed the Vishayakara vritti and Purushakara vritti, or the vritti vyapti and the pala vyapti. The process of cognition, we'll see that again. So everything, it's an inert process, but when the Purusha sheds light on it, it's revealed. It's like a sculpture forming in the mind. We saw the example of this bull and a sculpture, the whole thing, the mind takes the shape of that object, and then the Purusha shines the light of consciousness and things get illumined. The sculpting process itself is a mechanical process. There's no knowledge from that. In the Purusha, so in 4.18 it says, the Purusha is constant, it's seeing. So you ask yourself, is there a time when you are not aware of your mind? Answer will be no. When you are angry, you know it. When you are peaceful, you know it. When you are in deep sleep, you still know it, because after you slept, you know you slept well. So if the knower at moment A is different from the knower at moment B, okay, then the memory is impossible. Purusha is like the electricity keeping the memory alive. It's like volatile memory, the RAM you have in computer chips. Once you remove the electricity, the memory is gone. So like that, Purusha is the constant background to witness. Okay, so what it proves is that, later we'll see. So some of these Buddhist theories, they argued, oh, there is mind, there are many minds, it's all momentary. So the mind in this moment is different from the mind in this moment, and so on. So they try to come up with all kinds of theories to distinguish themselves from the Vedic theory where Purusha is established. That is the final unchanging witness. So Purusha is the constant background, the witness to everything. Vyasa's deduction is, if the Purusha were like the mind, changing and mutable, then sometimes the mind's thoughts would be known and sometimes they would not be known, just like the external objects. But since the mind's thoughts are always known, it proves that the witnessing consciousness never changes, never flickers, never looks away. The mind is the field, Kshetra, and the Purusha is the knower of the field, Kshetrajna. Okay, so Vyasa deduces that the Purusha is unchanging. It's just constantly just looking. So it is the final argument to refute that consciousness is a momentary stream. So you always know. So the Swami Sarvapriyananda would give this example. So Dad, this is in olden days, the movie theaters just started coming up. Maybe let's say in the 20s or 1920s in India, let's say. A dad is taking his son to the movie theater. Movie has already started, and there's images, everything is being played. So the son asks, so all these movies, so the dad says, so everything is projected on the screen. The son says, where is the screen? I only see images. The screen is behind. It is the one on which it's projected. But son says, I don't see, I only see images everywhere. Like that, the Purusha is constantly occluded by the thoughts in the mind. The Purusha is like that background screen, constant, unmoving, on which every image is projected. That's one way of seeing this. Purusha can be looked at as a light or as a substratum on which everything is played. Like Maya, it is a substratum on which this Maya, all these variegated images are being played. So this is one other way of looking at it. So there are different analogies, right? One is the movie theater analogy, where the light is the Purusha. Just light, shines light. When the film comes, it colors in a certain way. But light is light. It gets colored and projected on the chitta, the movie theater screen. So there are different analogies. All the analogies break down at some point. So you have to, it just points you towards something. Okay? So Purusha and the mind, distinction. So here, Patanjali, all this, what is Patanjali doing? To clearly distinguish, he's giving 2 points. One, all the objects in the world are real. It's not a figment of your mind. Second, mind is not the final witness. There is something called a Purusha. So Purusha and the mind, summary, the distinction summary. The nature of the mind is parinami, mutable or changing. The nature of the Purusha is aparinami, which is immutable and constant. What the mind perceives is objects through the senses. So it may look like that the mind is the subject here because it perceives objects through the senses, but no, it is just an empirical knower. It will see that soon when we see the reflected consciousness. It seems like empirically the mind is a subject because it perceives the objects, it looks like it, and it's also being perceived by the Purusha. But it's actually the reflection that it's perceived. It's not the final witness. The final witness is the Purusha, which perceives the mind itself. Perception of the mind is intermittent. Sometimes knows, sometimes doesn't. When it sees an object, it knows. When it doesn't see, it doesn't. The Purusha constantly looks at the mind, even when you are in deep sleep, because you know you've slept well. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what happened. Okay? Analogy of the mind is the moving pictures. Purusha is the screen, stationary white background. Role of the mind, it is the object, drishya, and the Purusha is ever the subject. Okay? Now, next sutra. Natat swabhasam drishyatvat. Nor is the mind swabhasam. Nor is the mind self-illuminating because of its nature as being an object of perception. So, Kshanikavada theory is strongly refuted in 4.18 and 4.21. 4.19 and 4.20 provide the supporting arguments. Okay. Natat swabhasam. Swabhasam means self-luminous. Swa means self. Bhasati means luminous. Swabhasam means self-luminosity. Natat, nor is that mind. Tat refers to that mind. Swabhasam, that is the mind. It is not self-illuminating because drishyatvat, because of its nature of being seen, drishyam, that which is seen, because it is an object to what? To the Purusha. Because of it being seen by the Purusha, it is not self-luminous. This is a logical proof that the mind is not self-luminating, because if it is self-luminous, it can see itself. And Patanjali is now going to state, no, you can't both see yourself and see something else at the same time. Okay, so it is not self-luminous because something else creates this luminosity. Okay, illuminating means shed consciousness on, like light. Consciousness in all these texts, it is analogous to light. Subject can only see object. Subject cannot see itself. You can observe the mind, therefore mind is an object, but something else sheds consciousness on it. Okay, this counters Shanikavada school of Buddhism, which holds the mind as self-luminating. Mind is an object of witness by the Puruṣa. This is very clearly seen in deep meditation. You'll see a thought coming and dissipating. It is gained with sufficient non-attachment, vairagyam. And now Patanjali says the mind, so previously he said mind is not self-luminating. Why is he saying that? Because the Shanikavada theory says mind is self-luminous. And Patanjali is saying mind is not self-luminous. He is making a statement. He is going to prove that in 4.20. Ekasamaye chobhayanavadharanam. The mind cannot see itself and an object simultaneously. Ekasamaye, at one time. Cha ubaya anavadharanam. Ubaya means both the object and its mind itself. It can't see the objects and itself at the same time. Anavadharanam means non-cognizing. Mind cannot be aware of itself and the object it perceives at the same instant. This sutra provides a psychological proof for why the mind cannot be self-illuminating. It argues based on the limitations of attention. So, Vyasa gives a single tasking argument. Mind cannot have two opposing motions. So, when directions of cognitive focus, you're looking at like a pot, focus is directed at the object, not at the mind. Then focus is directed internally. You are staring at the pot, but the mind is thinking about something. Okay, processing memory, abstract thought, focus directed internally. Even though it's the pot is before you, you are seeing, but you are not registering. So is this point clear? So Patanjali says you cannot see the mind and an object at the same time. That is why the mind is empirically, it can be a subject and an object, but it is not the final subject. Multitasking is a blur of multiple single tasking events. So the famous example Swami Hariharananda also gives is Alata Chakra. Alata means a firebrand. So in those days, so when they would do all this, at night during festivals, they would do all these patterns. It looks as though the whole figure 8 or a circle is there. So it is Alata Chakra, which is the Alata is a firebrand, a stick with you tie a cloth and put fuel and then it burns. Alata fire. In Mandukya Karika, Gaudapada's famous masterpiece, the last chapter is called Alata Shanti Prakaranam, the quenching of the firebrand. So, implication for the Puruṣa is this sutta actually sets a stage for the infinite regress problem if there is no Puruṣa. Okay. Implication for Puruṣa: since the mind is stuck in the serial processing one thing at a time, there must be a witness Puruṣa who stands outside of time and holds the continuity of both moment A and moment B together. Okay, these Buddhist theories say mind is momentary. Mind at this instant there is a mind, at next instant there is a mind, and like that. And the memory is because it's just what is there from the previous instant that is there. But you don't have, there's no continuity. And this Patanjali says, no, moment A and moment B are held together. because of the final witness called Puruṣa. Ati prasanga, now infinite regress with many minds. So if you say there is a mind A at one instant, it's different from mind B at one instant, everything is momentary, shanikavada, then the infinite regress problem happens. So chittantara drishye buddhi bhede ati prasanga smriti sankarascha. Chittantara drishye. Antara means another. The mind, if one mind is cognized by another mind, chittantara drishye, this can be another totally different mind or mind in different instance. So one mind, it becomes like a memory, and the next moment, this mind cognizes that mind. If that is what's happening, then there will be an infinite number of associations and confusion of memory. So one mind cannot cognize another mind. Okay? Buddhi, chittantara drishye buddhi buddhe ati prasanga. Buddhi buddhe, the knower of knowledge or the intelligence of the intellect or the mastermind. This buddhi buddhe, one which buddhi is intellect, the intelligence of the intellect, one which perceives that mind or the intellect. Ati prasanga means infinite, ati prasanga, which is like infinite regress, excessive associations. Sangha means to unite, prasanga, it's association. Ati means excessive, so there's excessive associations, which means infinite regress. Smriti sankarascha, creates confusion of memory and creates confusion. The whole thing is not possible, Patanjali says. Vijnanavadis claim, or the Shanikavadis claim, these people, mind B, the present mind, knows mind A, which is from the past. Okay? Vyasa's question, but mind B is also a seen object. Who knows mind B? Then the Vijnanavadi or Shanikavadi, they say mind C knows mind B. Mind C is the future mind. Then there is mind D, mind E, and who knows mind C. So there's like an infinite loop, this endless cycle of minds knowing minds that can never happen. So if you say that eventually you have to wait for the future to know something, so the whole thing doesn't make sense. If you say that there's now, you can have another way, they can argue in another way. They can say you have two things, mind A knows mind B knows mind A. Somehow you can make things work. There are two minds in the head. A cannot watch, A cannot see itself, but A can see B. B cannot see itself, but B can see A. Then what will happen? Then it is like a bootstrapping. So bootstrapping is used, it's a scientific term where a system can have two stable points. One is like a 0 point, another is a certain point where one there is nothing. The other, there are two, it's a state where both of them have a certain state. So there are two objects, and in the first both are empty. That's also a possible state. There's also a second state where you can, both of them have some content. So you're lifting yourself, like with pulling on your shoelaces to lift yourself, bootstrapping. That's why it's called bootstrapping. So those two states are possible. Both are legitimate states. Where you land up depends on where you start off with. But Patanjali here says, then you can be at the state of both not knowing anything. If each knows each other, then the possibility both not knowing is also possible. So even that is not possible. So all this to prove that mind is not a figment, all we are perceiving is not a figment of imagination, and the mind is not momentary. There is a substratum that is behind the mind. Okay, so the reasoning so far for establishing the Puruṣa, whatever is known as an object cannot be the final knower in the same act. The mind and its vrittis are known. Therefore, the mind is not the final knower. If the mind knows itself, either it must split into subject-object at the same instant, which 4.20 rejects. or another mind must know it, which leads to infinite regress. Therefore, a distinct, changeless witness, the Puruṣa, must be accepted. The mind can be an empirical knower, but not the ultimate knower. It is subject-like towards external objects, but object-like before Puruṣa. It cannot be both the ultimate subject and object in the same cognition, because that would require simultaneous self-objectification or lead to infinite regress. All right. So far, is this clear? All these are, this is like logical proof that there is a substratum. A changing thing cannot be the final witness. So, summary of the refutation in 4.14 to 4.21, Patanjali establishes the object is not a private mental projection. Objects in the world are real, independent of one chitta. It is not a figment. Even though all that we see is only in the mind, objects in the world are real. Okay, so that Patanjali established in 4.14 through 4.17. And then Patanjali says this, the changing mind is not the final witness. Chitta is known, changing, and it is not self-luminous. Chitta is the mind. If one mind moment is known by another, infinite regress and memory confusion follow. So the 4.14 to 4.17 refute Vijnanavada, where everything is a figment of your imagination, and the rest challenge Kshanikavada and the Buddha's self-luminosity theories. Okay. Now comes the last portions, how the Puruṣa perceives the mind, the theory of perception. So far, is everything clear? Or are there questions? So it's clear, everybody? Okay. All right. Now, relationship between Puruṣa and Prakriti. So we've seen some of this in the second chapter. So Patanjali is going to build or kind of put everything together. So this chapter can sometimes be looked at as a summary chapter too. Because Kaivalyam, when you, for liberation, you get liberation when you know Puruṣa and Prakriti are different. This was already explained in the second chapter. Tadartayeva drishyasya drishyasya. The purpose of the drishyam, the scene, is solely for the seer. That's what Patanjali says. And then, swaswami shaktyo swarupo palapti hetu sanyogaha. The union of the Puruṣa and the Prakriti causes the recognition of the true nature and the powers of them both. Swa means the owner, swa means the owned, swa, my property, swa, my property, that is the owned. Swami refers to the Puruṣa. Swarupam, their true natures are only known through superposition. That is why, so there's Shiva and Shakti. So these are all Puruṣa, Prakriti. It's also called Shiva and Shakti. Shakti refers to Maya. Shiva refers to pure consciousness. These are all just terms. Shiva not as Shiva the god, just Shiva as pure consciousness, Shakti as Maya. Without Shakti, they say Shiva is Shava. Shava means a corpse. So even that consciousness, it cannot do anything. For it to manifest itself, you need this Maya or the Shakti, Prakriti. Each is useless on its own. It's only when they come together, action happens. So it's a beautiful sutra. The power of the owned and the owner is known through the understanding of the true nature of either of them is known through their union as the cause. It is only when they unite, you know about each of them. But it also creates a confusion. You superimpose one on the other. See how the problem is. You can know each. It's only in this human birth you can understand the consciousness. But in the human birth, there is anyonya adhyasa. You think you are the body. So the properties of the consciousness are superimposed on the prakriti, the body and the mind. I am brilliant, I am handsome, I am beautiful, all this we say. And the properties of the body are also superimposed on the consciousness. Or you say, I am alive. So that's the consciousness on the body. I am happy, and then I am beautiful. All this, the properties of the prakriti are superimposed on the consciousness. Okay, so there is mutual exchange, anyonya adhyasa. So that confusion happens. So it's only through the union that each of the powers are understood. Each cannot act independently, and each on its own doesn't have any power. So I'll give a moment to absorb, for you to absorb all this. So there's Puruṣa, the Prakriti, body, mind, objects, and then there's this powerful thing called the mind, where the entire action, that's a link between the Puruṣa. It's also part of Prakriti. It is the finer aspect of Prakriti, subtle Prakriti. That's where the action happens. How the Puruṣa perceives the mind. Chiter aprati sankramaya tadakara pattau svabhuti samvedanam. Chite, of the pure consciousness. So please note, chit and chitta are different things. Can anybody say what each is? Anybody?
I'll give it a go. Yeah, chit being pure consciousness and chitta being the link.
Yes.
To that.
Yeah, it doesn't say chitte, it says chite. So chit, it is of the pure consciousness. Chite, of the means of the pure consciousness. It is not chitte, it is chite. Aprati sankramaya, that which is absolutely unmoving. That's the Puruṣa. So Patanjali doesn't use the same words again and again. He says aprati sankramaya, means that which is absolutely unmoving. So let's look at the word krama. The word is aprati sankrama. Krama means it is a sequence, movement, step, or it's a step. Krama is a step. Sankrama means moving from one step to another, or one place to another. Aprati sankrama means that which is unmoving. Tat akaram apatau, which means tat akara, that consciousness form, apatau, taking the likeness. Although the chit, the pure consciousness, does not move into, mix with, or enter the mind, when the buddhi assumes a consciousness-like form, tat akara means form, that consciousness-like form, apatau, taking the likeness of that form, swabuddhi samvedanam, one's own buddhi becomes experienced or illumined. Okay, samvedanam means cognition, awareness, illumination of one's own buddhi. Now we are coming into the concept of reflected consciousness. Okay, buddhi, Puruṣa does not directly grasp external objects. It illumines the buddhi vritti, the mental presentation or screen on which the objects appear. Okay, so we talked about this vritti vyapti. This is the process of cognition. The examples given are like a sculpture forming on the mind, inert, and then it's being illumined. Or you can look at it as the mechanical process is the film going through. So you're seeing something, right? The film is going through, the light is shining on that. So that's the mechanical process, just the film moving. But when the light shines, the whole screen is illumined by that. And you know things. If the light is not shining, then you don't know this. You don't see that. Assume you're in the movie, that whole thing is now visible for the mind system to cognize. So this is the buddhi vritti, or cognition. The Puruṣa is unsullied the mind. So the terms, everything is very loaded. Apratisankramaya, absolutely unmoving or unmixing. So the thing is, the consciousness does not move. It does not, even though it says pervades, it's not like blood flowing in or water going in and irrigating the crops, going through every hole. No, it just conscious, just by the light shines, like sunlight doesn't go through all the holes. It just shines wherever it can go. It has access, it just goes. It just shines like that. The consciousness is absolutely unmoving. It doesn't seep through like water. Unmixing. It is unsullied. Very important point. Apratisankramaya. It's unmoving, unmixing. And it is unsullied by the mind. Two are completely different. So, and it's said in the second chapter, 20th Sutra, Drashta Drishimatra Shuddhopi Pratyayanupashyaha. The Drashta Drishimatra, it has only the power of seeing or illuminating. Even though the seer is pure and unmixed, Shuddha api, it's pure. Pratyaya anupashya, it illumines only the buddhi vritti, the mental presentation of the object. Anupashya, seeing means illuminating here. Okay. Think of it like the projector lamp of the movie theater. When you say it sees, it just illuminates the whole thing. Not it sees the buddhi vritti, the mental presentation of the object, not the external object directly. It sees how the mind after, that's why it's called coloring of the object. The object is in a certain way, but the mind colors and portrays it on the mind, and then consciousness illumines it. Okay? So we've seen all that when you bring something, the mind is like a crystal. When you bring this green leaves, it appears green, and then because of the light, you see that. So, introduction to the reflected consciousness. We've seen this before. So there are two separate things. So this also explains the question of who does the actions, because consciousness doesn't do anything. It just illumines things. Then the mind is inert. So how does knowing take place? How does action take place? All this is happening because of this reflected consciousness. The consciousness reflected in the buddhi is called chidabhasa, because the Puruṣa doesn't move. The film, like it moves right from senses, the film is moving like that. So the constantly images are coming and it's being moving. Without the light, you don't see anything. So consciousness projects. That is called Puruṣākara vritti. Vishayakara vritti is this film moving. Puruṣākara vritti is the illumination of the light and the projection on the screen. Okay, this is to memory or samskara storehouse. From memory / samskaras can come either way. What's on when we daydream, it is from the memory. When we see external objects, it is from the senses. Okay, that's why the mind is also called the leader of the king of the senses. And what is jiva and what is Ishvara? So jiva is this entity. So jiva, and this is all Vedantic. It's jiva is the Atma reflected in a small reflecting medium, mind plus the body. Everything looks small. Whereas the Paramatma or Ishvara, it is it's the same thing on a concave mirror. It is Atma reflecting on the universe as the reflecting medium. Everything looks big. So it's that is the small and big reflections. They cause the Jiva and the Ishvara. So the quality of the reflecting medium is very important. Still lake and lake with ripples. The moon is always still and clear. That's like the Puruṣa. But what is seen here, anger. I am angry. You're superimposing both. You're superimposing the quality, the anger, which is a quality of the mind. You're superimposing on you the unblemished Puruṣa. I am angry. You're mixing the two. The moon is unblemished, but this looks rippled. Okay, quality of the reflecting medium. Now, Patanjali gives a grand synthesis of the perception theory. So far, is this clear to everyone? There's a lot of information, how the Puruṣa perceives. We've covered this before also in different aspects, and Patanjali is now putting everything together. And I'm bringing in some Vedantic examples to make things clearer. Yoga strictly, it doesn't use these examples. I'm bringing it from Vedanta, so it's clearer to everybody. The Puruṣakara Vritti and the Vishayakara Vritti, these are all more from the Vedanta. It's probably there in Sankhya also, but Yoga Sutras, it's like condensed. So I'm bringing the examples from other places to illustrate it. So far, is it clear? Are there any questions? Any short? Okay. Anu, is it clear? Okay. Grand synthesis of the perception theory. Drashtudrishyoruparaktam Drashtudrishyoparaktam chittam sarvartam. The mind being colored by the seer, that is shedding light, and the seen, prakriti, everything is understood. Drashtudrishyo, the seer and the seen, uparaktam, colored, chittam, the mind, the chitta, the mind, sarvartam, all the objects of the world, they are being understood. Okay, so I'm bringing in again the Vedantic thing, the Vishayakara Vritti and Puruṣakara Vritti. As I said, Vishayakara Vritti is an inert process, because when you're looking at an object, you can be daydreaming, you are seeing it. The sculpting is happening in the mind, but you don't cognize, you didn't even know you saw it. It's when the mind sheds light on it, then you understand, this is a bull with these features, all that. Okay, vritti vyapti, phala vyapti. So it's called Vishayakara Vritti is also called vritti vyapti. Puruṣakara Vritti is called phala vyapti. Phala means fruit of this. The end result. End result is cognition. Vishayakara Vritti is a modification. This is object modification on the mind. That's the sculpting. Puruṣa is the light, right? The light shines on that. So it illuminates, this vritti illuminates this like a light streaming in and illuminating like that. It is a Puruṣakara Vritti. Okay. The first modification is just sculpting. Second modification is illuminating. Vyapti means pervade. So that's why it's called. The mind takes the shape of an external object. It's a mechanical process. The consciousness illuminates it, and the feeling of I know arises. Another example, the sun, Puruṣa consciousness, cloth is the prakriti, crystal is the mind. The mind, it takes the intelligence from the Puruṣa, it takes a form from the matter, and it presents the package to us and says, look, I did this. I am the conscious reality. So it can cheat that way. Okay. Now, the mind acts in conjunction with the Puruṣa. So this is also an important sutra. So the mind acts in conjunction. So it's actually a very important sutra, and we'll see why. Tadasankyeya vasanabi chitramapi paratam samhyatyakaritvat. Tad, okay, it's a big sutra. Although tad asankyeya vasanabhihi, sankhya means count, numbers. Asankyeya means countless, innumerable. What innumerable? What? Vasanas, all these imprints which are ready for manifestation. Although the mind has countless vasanas sculpted on it, chitram means sculpted. Chitram means like a sculpture. Chitram api, even though it has thousands, countless vasanas sculpted on it, parartham, it exists for another purpose, which is for that of the Puruṣa, because it acts in conjunction. It says samhyatya karitvat. Samhyatya means in conjunction with, karitwas acting. It acts in conjunction, or it serves as a composite instrument. Okay, this is an important thing. Okay, significance of the sutra. 4.22 says the buddhi becomes illumined in the presence of the Puruṣa. 4.23 says the mind is colored by both the seer and the seen, so it can know objects. Then 4.24 says, but do not mistake this powerful mind for the self. However complex it is still for another, the Puruṣa. It's a very complex instrument. Mind becomes illumined by the Puruṣa, mind is colored by both. It's a complex composite instrument with thousands of sculptures, but it exists for something else, the Puruṣa. And Patanjali or Vyasa says anything that is carefully assembled cannot serve itself. It serves something else, because Puruṣa is something you cannot witness. It's ever the subject. So you're witnessing a complex instrument, the mind, but don't think that is the final thing. It is just an instrument serving something else. And Vyasa's logic is anything that is carefully assembled cannot serve itself. It serves something else, like a house existing for the owner, so meticulously put together, or a mattress with all this thing, it is for the sleeper. Complexity implies instrumentality. Instrumentality implies a user. The mind is complex and instrumental. Therefore, the mind is not the final self. It serves the Puruṣa. Is this understood? Or are there questions? I'll give you a second or a few seconds to sink in. Anu, is this clear? Are you there? Okay. Okay. Lena, clear? Amy, you had a question?
Yes. I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'm just kind of struggling to put it all together. The concept of the mind existing for the Puruṣa, I can I can understand the idea, but then I kind of get a little tongue-tied between the knower and knowing, right, and known. So, the Puruṣa being the knower, but like where the knowing happens, and I think I'm just sort of tying myself in knots trying to think, because it's like if the mind serves the Puruṣa, then it's like linguistically I want to say that the Puruṣa knows, but knowing implies changing, and the Puruṣa is changeless. And so
yes, you made a statement saying Puruṣa is the knower. Puruṣa is not the knower. Because if you know something, you change.
Okay.
The knower is this complex with the mind, Puruṣa illuminating. That's why this reflected consciousness, it clarifies several things. The act of knowing, act of doing. The knowing happens due to this borrowed light in the presence of the consciousness. In the presence of the mind, this light borrowed, it is where the knowing happens. Electricity itself cannot cause knowing. All the memory in the computer, it's stored. You need this physical gadget, the RAM, or even a non-volatile memory. Electricity will come and do its job, and things are stored in the physical instrument. You need both the physical instrument and the electricity to etch something permanent. That is some data.
Right. And I think when I kind of imagine it that way, then it starts to seem like the electricity serves rather than the other way around.
I see. So it's the Puruṣa. Okay. That's why analogies break down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of in this knowing concept of what's serving what. You know, the Puruṣa illuminates, which seems like that's serving the knower, whoever the knower is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this traces back to one of the questions you asked earlier, this entire thing. Why did this happen? So why did the Puruṣa Prakriti come together, create all this confusion, and then you are then trying to detangle yourself from the Prakriti? Why did this conjunction happen, and why does this process cause? Because that seems to be what's happening. You asked this question, and that is one of the most difficult questions to answer. Maya, in the entire of Vedanta, now we are discussing yoga, but this whole thing, even in Sankhya Yoga, there is this magnet coming, a whole thing comes, and then you're trying to dissociate difference, right? That's a very difficult question. It's
yeah.
So
I mean,
why
it's like they serve each other, you know. You know, it doesn't, like, sometimes I feel like there's a hierarchy, you're right, of Puruṣa being eternal and better, right, than Prakriti. But then it's like the Puruṣa serves aspects of the Prakriti at times, and you know, even though we say it the other way, it seems more of a tangle.
Yeah. The Puruṣa, the way they say it is the Puruṣa, it's just that it just illumines them. So the electricity, wherever it can flow, it will flow. So if you look at it that way, you won't see it as, oh, the electricity is coming and serving the memory by etching. So the electricity, wherever it can flow, it will flow. And when it flows, certain things happen and things get etched in the computer memory. The Prakriti has arranged itself for the electricity to flow through. Electricity doesn't really serve. Oh, I have to serve. I'm just flowing like that. The sun's light, when it comes there, classic example in Vedanta, lotus opens the sun. So Bhagavan says in the Bhagavad Gītā, Samoham sarva bhuteshu namesti namedveshyosti na priya. All beings are same to me. I have no favorites. One is not dear, one I don't hate.
Yeah, I see. So it's sort of like Prakriti can arrange itself.
Yes, to get the blessings. Yes, of the Puruṣa.
Yeah. I had another thought, but I totally lost it. So okay. Yeah.
So